She slammed a $100,000 invoice on the hood of my truck like she was dropping a badge and a gun. You ever see someone so sure of themselves they walk right up to your front gate, paper shaking, sunglasses on, HOA badge swinging, and tell you pay your back dues or we're putting a lien on your ranch by Friday? Yeah, that was my morning. I stared at her then at the 6 board members crowding around blocking my driveway like they'd inherited the right from my grandfather himself. One of them, clipboard in hand, flashed an eviction notice, wrong address, not even for land inside their HOA. Behind them, I caught a glint of sunlight on bolt cutters. They came to cut my fence, seize my barn claim, what wasn't theirs. But here's the thing, they didn't know who they were dealing with. My ranch. It sits on federal agricultural exemption land. Their HOA has as much authority here as a scarecrow in a thunderstorm. And I'm not just some guy who lucked into land, I'm a U.S. Army combat engineer. Reading land deeds comes as natural to me as most folks reading street signs. So before a single bolt cutter touched wire, I hit record on my phone. If you've ever tangled with an HOA, trust me, you'll want to stick around for this one. See, I grew up learning to read the land the way other kids learn to read bedtime stories. By the time I enlisted, I could tell soil density from the way it felt under my boots. I could look at a fence line and know what had happened there even if nobody talked about it. My granddad, World War II vet, taught me that land isn't just boundaries. It's memory, identity, duty, all of it sewn together with sweat and the kind of pride you don't find in city council meetings. When he handed me the keys to this ranch, he didn't give me property. He gave me purpose. This place is miles from any HOA line tucked between Cedar Hills and cattle trails where the only map that matters is the one the government forgot to change. Out here, quiet has a sound wind brushing dry grass, a gate creaking in the sun. So when I found the first HOA flyer taped to my gate, it felt like a mosquito landing on a sleeping lion. It listed dues, rules, threats as if my ranch had wandered into their neighborhood in the night. I laughed it off at first, mistake I figured. But the next day another flyer, and then another, each one more confident than the last. That's when something cold took up space in my chest. My granddad used to say, "The land will call for you when it needs you." Standing at that gate, I heard him. I promised I'd defend this place the way he defended his country. Calm, steady, unbreakable. Didn't realize those flyers weren't warnings. They were opening moves. They thought I was too isolated, too outnumbered, too set in my ways to fight back. But land has memory, and this ranch could sense the storm long before I did. Little things started shifting, strangers slowing their cars by the fence, unfamiliar footprints by the mailbox, the uneasy feeling of someone mapping my property without permission. Reminded myself this ranch has been untouched for over 60 years, protected by men who understood freedom better than comfort. But even so, something in the wind told me peace was temporary. The ranch came to me the way old stories do, slowly through my granddad's journals, yellowed deeds and maps he drew by hand. He documented everything: rainfall, the birth of calves, how creek beds shifted after storms. As a kid, he'd let me trace those maps while he explained how each fence post and path held a story. Land remembers who respects it, he'd say, thumb-tapping the page. Didn't get the weight of that until he left the ranch to me. Every summer I ran barefoot through dust that smelled like baked earth and cattle. The broken windmill at the edge of the fields became my fortress. Grandpa said some things are meant to age with dignity. Out here, independence wasn't an idea. It was air. Neighbors help if needed, but you don't wait for a handout. The land teaches you discipline, punishes arrogance, rewards patience. Grandpa always said, people stacked too close forget how to think for themselves. Wide land keeps a man honest. I didn't get it, not fully, until the world outside started to crowd in, stacking itself with rules and boards and committees. But the ranch stood apart. Free land, free spirit, free history. Inheriting it, I felt a pressure in the silence, the cedar grove behind the barn still thick with resin and old soil. The cattle trails curved toward water. The windmill still leaned like it refused to collapse. Everything looked as it always had, but heavier somehow, like the land was waiting to see if I'd earned it. That first day walking fence lines alone, I realized I didn't just own this land. I belonged to it. Coming home from the military isn't the parade people imagine. It's more like stepping out of a long, echoing tunnel, ears still ringing. I carried that with me, shadows that stretched at night, instincts that twitched at sudden noises, a craving for silence deep enough to settle the dust inside my skull. The ranch was the only place wide enough to hold all that. It needed work. Fences sagged, roofs curled. The barn smelled like time itself had made a home in it. But fixing things wasn't a chore. It was therapy. Each board I nailed, each field I cleared, I stitched myself back together. The quiet wasn't empty. It was clean. Here the wind wasn't enemy fire. It was breath. The barn door's creak was a memory, not a warning. Every sunrise stretched over the fields like a promise you don't have to force healing. You can coax it. But peace attracts attention, especially from folks who don't understand it. The first car that rolled up, window down, driver smiling too tightly. "Have you registered with the HOA yet?" I laughed, thinking she was joking. She didn't laugh back, just nodded and drove off. A few days later, another car. Different faces, same question. Each time their tone shifted, curious, then expectant. "You do know about the HOA, right?" They'd glance past me, scanning the house, the barn, the acreage. Each encounter rang a little louder in my head. Then came Karen. It was a Tuesday morning, smelled like cedar and sun. She stood at my gate, mid-50s, blouse and skirt so color-matched it looked like a uniform, hair sprayed solid. First of many clipboards held like a weapon. She didn't call out, didn't knock, just waited, tapping her pen. "You're the new owner," she said. Not a question, a diagnosis. "I've owned this land my whole life," I answered. She'd already started writing. Karen's the kind of person you can hear before she speaks, sharp, chemical, thick with superiority. Rules are her gospel, except she writes them herself. People called her dedicated, but what they meant was obsessed. She didn't enforce regulations, she hunted violations, treated homeowners like employees, non-members like trespassers. "Property values depend on obedience," she said, reciting a creed. "This isn't your land to manage," I told her, but she didn't blink. Her need for control had a history. Before I came back, she tried to annex a trailer park nearby, said it ruined community harmony. She handed out pamphlets, tried to install branded mailboxes overnight. Residents fought back, lawyers stepped in, and the county shut her down. Didn't humble her, made her hungry. So when she realized my ranch bordered her HOA, she saw opportunity, leverage, maybe even a shot at redemption for her old embarrassment. She talked in clipped sentences full of authority, never asked if I'd join, only when. Spoke about mandatory contributions and community landscape aesthetics like she was running a company, not a neighborhood. But it wasn't her voice that got me. It was her certainty. She truly believed independence was a thing of the past. That power came from paper, not people. The truth about my ranch is simple, it's mine. Paid off decades ago. My granddad made sure a man never owed the ground under his boots. That freedom, written in faded ink on the original deed, made the land priceless and made it a target for folks who wanted a shortcut to power. Didn't take long to realize the HOA was on the edge of collapse. Years of bad spending, failed projects, and a disastrous gym install had drained their funds. Raising fees would have started a revolt. So they looked outward toward landowners like me. New members, new dues, new leverage. Karen saw my acreage as the crown jewel. But this wasn't just about money. The ranch wasn't replaceable. Every board, every path, every scar held my grandfather's memory. Losing it wouldn't have been an inconvenience, it'd be a betrayal. I wasn't just protecting property. I was guarding a legacy. First envelope showed up on a Monday. Return address said Community Compliance Division. Inside a violation notice. I was harboring unapproved livestock. I laughed out loud. My cattle have been here longer than most of the paved roads in town. 2 days later, another envelope, my barn non-compliant with neighborhood standards. Never mind that the barn isn't even visible from their boundary. By week's end, third notice, fence height violation. They knew the measurements they were watching. The pattern was clear. They weren't just harassing me. They were laying the groundwork for a takeover. Then a neighbor called. "Hey, heads up, they tagged you on Facebook." The HOA had posted a list of my so-called violations photos and all calling me out by name. I lived outside their jurisdiction, but they were trying to build a public case. Make it look like I'd ignored them for months. I started noticing cars idling across the road, engines running, windows tinted. I'd be repairing a fence post and someone would take photos of me, the barn, the cattle. Karen herself showed up one morning, tape measure stretched across my driveway. Driveway exceeds community width standards, she said deadpan. This isn't your community, I told her. She smirked, snapped the tape shut, muttered something about documentation, and left. Then came the drones, first one, then another, buzzing overhead cameras pointed at my fields. Every veteran knows the feeling of being watched. That awareness crawls up your spine. They weren't just watching, they were preparing for something bigger. The gossip spread fast. Neighbors started to avoid me. At the feed store at the diner, I could feel conversations stiffen when I walked in. Karen spun her story at every meeting, every bake sale, every committee. 6 years of unpaid dues, she'd say, voice thick with disappointment. The board tried to help, but he refuses to comply. It didn't matter that none of it was true. Repetition turns rumor into reality. They sent a mass email subject, rancher threatens community harmony, accused me of aggressive tendencies, refusing lawful directives, even of threatening a board member. All of it fabricated. But fear spreads faster than facts. The sheriff came by, leaned against his cruiser. HOA tried to file a complaint, he said. Said you threatened them. But they've got no evidence. He knew the score, but the damage was done. In this town, a rumor repeated enough times sticks like burrs in your boots. But what the HOA didn't count on was this: I know the law. My land sits on agricultural exemption, mapped and protected by state statute. That's not just decorative, it's legally untouchable. HOA boundaries stop where my fence starts. They can't apply dues retroactively, can't claim membership without paperwork. Attempting to collect money by force, sending fake notices, posting lies online crosses the line from annoying to criminal. There was a night after another drone buzzed my barn when I sat on the porch and thought maybe I should leave. Maybe walking away would buy back my peace. But then I remembered the journals. My grandfather wrote, "This land has its own way of fighting, not with noise, but with silence and patience. A man who listens to it will outlast any storm." That's when I decided I'd stand my ground. They didn't come quietly. Convoy of SUVs, minivan dust rising behind them. Doors flew open. People spilled out. Karen with bolt cutters, board members filming on their phones. She marched to the fence, bolt cutters ready. Record everything she barked. I stepped off the porch, phone in hand. If they wanted a show, so would I. Karen planted herself by the fence, shouting, "This land is HOA common space. You're trespassing." I almost laughed. "You're out of your mind," I said, phone recording. She squeezed the cutters, metal groaning board members crowding closer. I told her, "Cut that and you're committing criminal property damage." She didn't care. So I kept filming. What they didn't know, they were building my case. When the wire snapped, I spoke calm as stone. "Before you cut anything else, you need to see this." I pulled out my folder, federal agricultural deed, held it high. "This ranch is under federal exemption. Your boundaries end where mine begin." Phones lowered. Even Karen hesitated. I unrolled a county map from 1961 across her SUV. "Here's my boundary. Here's where your HOA ends, half a mile that way." One board member mumbled, "We were told the boundary expanded." I shook my head. Boundaries don't expand because someone wants them to. They expand through law, and you've got none. They froze. Then a county cruiser rolled up. Sheriff stepped out, broad-shouldered, took in the scene. Karen ran toward him. "Sheriff, arrest him for obstruction." He looked at her like she was speaking another language. "From where I'm standing, he's on his own land," he said. She tried again. "We've documented multiple violations. He's interfering with board authority." He nodded toward the bolt cutters. "That's attempted property damage, ma'am." The silence was heavy. A few board members made for their cars. Karen stood alone, bolt cutters dangling, realization settling in. Sheriff shook his head. "This is about to get real complicated for you." The video hit Facebook before the dust settled. I uploaded it raw. Karen, bolt cutters, sheriff shutting down their fantasy. By sundown, it was everywhere, shared, commented, dissected. The local newspaper ran a headline, "HOA attempts illegal annexation of Veterans Ranch." The article quoted statutes, detailed the exemption, called the board's actions a concerning escalation. Still shots from the video, Karen's face twisted, cutters shining, captioned, "Overreach caught on camera." Her reputation gone. The power she wielded for years snapped. My attorney filed a civil suit, harassment, attempted fraud, unauthorized penalties. The evidence was overwhelming. Residents within the HOA started digging through records. What they found hit harder: mismanaged funds, inflated contracts, unauthorized fees. State investigators stepped in. They found forged signatures, improper elections, dues increases never approved. When the final report came down, Karen's name topped every violation. The penalty steep. She was barred from any HOA leadership for a decade. Her power gone. 2 board members were charged, one for forgery, one for attempted extortion. The HOA was forced to refund tens of thousands to residents. Meetings filled with anger, demands for accountability. Justice didn't just arrive, it settled in, made itself comfortable. After the dust settled, neighbors who once avoided me showed up at my gate. Not with accusations, but with apologies. Some brought pie honey feed. "We should have asked you, not them," one old couple told me. I shook their hands, letting the tension finally go. At the next community gathering, the new board asked me to speak. I explained how land rights worked, what the law actually said. Folks listened, really listened. Word spread. Ranchers from all over the county came by looking for advice, just wanting someone to tell them they weren't crazy for standing their ground. The valley felt lighter. The ranch felt like home again. I spent the next weeks repairing what mattered. Painted the barn deep red, fixed the windmill, cleaned the old memorial stone for my granddad. Planted a young cedar beside it just the way he would have. Walked the fence line at sunset, gold light spilling over the grass. The land wasn't fighting anymore. It was breathing again. So let me ask you, where's the line between defending your rights and being labeled the troublemaker? What would you have done if it was your family's land, your legacy on the line? If you've ever stood your ground against an HOA or any bully, tell your story below. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone. And if you ever find yourself facing a crowd that wants to take what isn't theirs, don't shout. Don't match their chaos. Stand firm. Let the truth do the heavy lifting. They might push, they might threaten, they might try everything. But in the end, all they'll lose is themselves.